Hey everyone, my name is Mark Takata. I'm the Fat Panther on Slack and Twitter and name it. This bike here is Fatty McFats, so we're like, you know, besties. I'm going to be talking about e-bikes today, so it's a little bit different than what we've been talking about. There's not any programming or JavaScript, but there is some engineering. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is when you go out and you buy a bike, or you're looking for a bike, or you're shopping for bikes, it's really hard to figure out like what kind of bike you want to get, and the differentiator usually is wattage. And most people think that wattage means how powerful is this bike, and it's sort of true, but it's actually a misnomer. So what's a watt? So basically a watt is a unit of energy that's actually used by a motor, not that is put out by the motor. And generally speaking, that does normally correlate with power output, but it's kind of like saying that you know, you have two cars and one is faster than the other because it uses more gas. Well, that's probably true, honestly, but it might not be. The other thing to actually look at is you'll go out and you'll see these bikes that say they have 250 watt motors. What does that really mean? Well, 250 watts in this case means nominal wattage, which is the minimum amount of power that the motor is going to put out to actually be running, which is never what you're actually going to be using out on the trail or wherever you're riding it. What's really important and is never listed is what's called peak or continuous power, which is the amount of wattage that you can put through one of these motors continuously without it basically just turning into a giant fireball behind you, which is bad. We don't want that. So there's been a lot of talk in the industry about finding something that's, you know, that's a better indicator of actual power. Newton meters has been talked about a lot. It's actually a rating of torque. It would make a lot of sense, but it's a little bit too geeky, I guess, for people. It's been hard to get consumers to understand what a Newton meter actually means in terms of bikes. So the next thing that you'll see is there's a whole bunch of different types of motors on these bikes, and you know, you obviously need a motor to get from place to place. So there's front and back hubs. Most hubs you'll find are actually on the back of bikes, except for some cargo bikes, you'll see them on the front. And then there's geared versus direct drive. Geared motor actually utilizes gears inside of the motor itself, and that's what I have on the back of this one. That's a Bafang 750 watt nominal internally geared rear hub. And essentially an electric motor is happiest when it's spinning really, really fast. But if it's spinning really, really fast, then your wheel's probably spinning really, really fast, and that's not always optimal. Sometimes you need to be going up a hill, so you need a lot more torque. So that's where internally geared motors do really, really well. A direct drive has nothing in it except for the magnets. Am I good? Okay. Sorry. And direct drive motors tend to be found in really, really high powered applications. 10,000 watt nominal bikes are out there that you can go out and buy. They look almost like motocross bikes. The other thing that you'll see a lot, and actually Specialized is one of the companies that's doing this a lot, is a mid-drive where actually the front where your pedals are is replaced by a motor. And the advantage that this gives is you're actually getting to use the mechanical advantage of your drivetrain, right? You've got gears. As a person, we use those gears to actually put torque through the back wheel, so this is just kind of using that system. Unfortunately, the most power you and I can put through a system is, oh, you know, maybe 400 watts continuous if we're like, you know, really, really athletic. These guys can put up to like 2,500 watts through it. So you can pretty much explode a drivetrain if you're not careful. And then there's friction drives, which just don't even talk about them. Essentially, they're like big rubber balls that spin and hit your tire and then move your tire along. They're super inefficient. Like, they're just really bad. The next thing to talk about is the batteries themselves. Like, what does it mean when you have a 36-volt battery? So voltage is somewhat like horsepower. The higher the volts, the more power you can actually pump through a system. And normally there'll be two numbers that you'll see. There'll be a volt and there'll be amp hours. And the amp hours are important because they're kind of the fuel tank if you multiply them times the volts. And to get an approximate range of a bike, you can do watt hours times volts divided by approximately 18. It depends on how efficient your bike is. This one I found, it's kind of heavy and whatever. So it's closer to like 17, and I ran out of time. Anyway, I have way more stuff, but all right. So if you're a maker, you can make a bike. If you have any soldering experience at all, it's actually really easy to make a bike. I'm terrible at that stuff, and I was able to put this thing together. This thing will do 30 miles an hour all day long. It has a range of about 30 or 40 miles, depending on how flat it is. So you can do it too. All right, thank you.